Alrighty, hello every folks, and good morning! It's time to talk about more unicorns doing the overlording dealy. Hi everyone, welcome our new overlords. But anyway, yeah, new patch is kinda sorta dropped-ish. Now the reason I say that is a new patch came out, currently only on PlayStation. Apparently the other ones are currently waiting for approval and they ran into some sort of shenanigans. But there is a patch for the game out, 1.03. Apparently they fixed some sort of issue with ranked matches and friend matches, as well as there were bugs in a few stages that were fixed. Personally, I haven't seen any bugs outside of, there was one brief moment where for half a second the second Valor point didn't show up, but the third one did. And then it just immediately fixed itself. But I literally have not seen a single other bug aside from that, so I'm kind of curious what those were. But also, they say that in ranked matches, there's been a change so that you can compete without any reward, even if you exceed the maximum number of matches. So this all sounds like, I think this was all Coliseum stuff. Personally, I haven't run into the Coliseum yet. I've just been dorking around everywhere else, so... you know, that sounds like maybe it'll kind of sort of address the whole item thing. Now, I don't know. Apparently, you specifically were just handed out rewards before, and I guess some of those rewards were what some folks were complaining about. I don't know. Wherever it is, I have not been to that spot yet. But I wanted to share some thoughts on Albian because I just finally got to the third island, continent. It's fine. I prefer calling them islands. It just feels more convenient. So the clips that you're seeing here are basically the journey over to Albion as well as kind of my first few hours with it. Actually, a little bit of a side note here, I was very, very tempted to suddenly change what I was doing because there was suddenly a very awkward interaction between Monica and Monard that showed up partway through, where she decided that the Lion King happened to look just like a pet cat that she liked, and she would like being with someone that she could pet, which is... somehow wholesome and creepy at the same time. But, oh well. So I went around testing around with a few different builds to get ready for, you know, harder areas and things to try to address some of the issues from before. So I started playing around with an arrow rain setup, essentially a double arrow rain setup that you can... if you have somebody with Arrow Rain, and you have the accessory that allows you to insta-fire charged moves, and then you also have another move that gives him a second AP, you can do 2 Arrow Rains, though truth be told it ended up feeling more practical in the long run just to stick with a 3-point setup, just have him fire his Arrow Rain and then just follow it up with a row shot. It just seemed like there wasn't enough stuff surviving from the first few attacks that a second Arrow Rain was even necessary. It just... like, it basically would completely make sure that everything was 100% guaranteed dead by the end of the fight. It just seemed like a bit much. It really is just this initial starting off with Arrow Rain that has some really, really good Alpha Strike potential. It kind of feels like that moment that you end up upgrading your grenade launchers next XCOM 2. It's like, hey, look, we can start every fight with this. So that feels nice. And of course, we ended up getting some Rogaine over for Mr. Joseph. He's looking way snazzier these days. And yeah, so was testing around with a few different teams. The Scorpion team I was making fun of last time ended up getting rebuilt in a far better way than you're seeing in these videos here, going for a cleric instead of a druid. Main issue with the team at that point, actually to probably explain this a little bit, the whole deal with that team is that the shaman is there to essentially use like a flooding poison kind of situation to hit everybody with poison, and then the thieves are there to evade, and then the wyvern is there to use the death pillar, which has a guaranteed kill against anything that's poisoned to, well, insta-kill something. And the idea is that it's supposed to be able to kind of poison everybody on the map, and then take out the highest HP target, potentially leaving them far more vulnerable. They're meant to be a bit of an opener squad to allow the cavalry to go finish somebody else off safely, especially once we get to these higher-end areas where things like bears and heavy armor units and things like that end up being a pretty massive threat if you don't have direct fights available, and oftentimes you'll end up getting chip damage in return. So, high evasion, guaranteed kill, you know, follow it up with somebody that can do more traditional damage. It felt like a pretty solid approach. So, the shaman in this case was using that poison staff to poison everything. Truth be told, in most cases, I found it a lot more practical just to use the poison daggers on the thieves there. Essentially, two of them poison. One of them goes for the highest AP target. One of them goes for the highest HP target, as long as they're not poisoned. And then the last one goes for the AP steal on whatever seems to have the most AP at the moment that's currently available. And while a little bit of a chaotic setup, it generally has been pretty good at stalling things out and opening up for other squads. Eventually, I ended up swapping the shaman out for a cleric, which then allowed them to be recovered if their evades didn't end up being held up for one reason or another. One of the nice things is that those, well, one of the downsides of those evades is that they will get killed by True Strike stuff, but for everything else, including magical, physical, everything else that isn't a guaranteed attack, they end up functioning pretty near perfectly. Especially with the ice swords that you can get from Ware Canada, which then give them all an additional evade, so that's always nice. Just gives them a lot more extra stuff. But yeah, Parting Resurrection turned out to kind of be the play for that particular team rather than the Shaman, because it really wasn't direct damage that was the problem. It was any hit landing whatsoever and not having somebody in the front row to do their evades that was the real issue. But anyway, so this also got me testing another theory that I'd heard, which actually, hold on, let me go back one clip here just to show this. So in this case, I'd heard that using golden eggs as well as the Pauper's Bracelet would let you improve your plunder rates, so that if you use plunder on somebody, you would get a higher amount. I think what happened there is I think somebody might have used Plunder 2 for the first time and then ended up plundering in an area. So, like, right here, since you do get Plunder 2 potentially at the same time as you would get Plunder, or as you'd get a Golden Egg, possibly. Like, in this case, it went up to 3,600 because it stole a random amount from 2 people. Also, I was wondering how the hell I was supposed to get to Albion. I just didn't have the fish when going down to the harbor with the really high level requirement down here. And I actually want to show this clip one more time here, because this is one of those things that would mean that would actually kind of get ruined in a scaled, if they added full level scaling to the game. Because this harbor immediately got stuck in my mind of, like, why is it such a high level requirement out of absolutely nowhere? And so many other towns I forgot to go back and repair, and in this case I had no idea where their boat went. And it had an unusual requirement for those fish, which were kind of uncommon all over the island. It was one of those resources that I'd used a few times but didn't have very much of. So immediately I remembered to go back to that harbor at some point, and sure enough, it ended up being the, I believe that's what folks were describing as the early gateway to Albion here. So anyways, I went over here when I was trying to max out towns, and immediately a bunch of things came to mind. For one thing, I love the delay ability on the Angels. That's so freaking cool that they can just kind of stop units and turn on timers. It's crazy how so many games make timers really annoying, and in this case it's just like, damn, that is a really cool timer. I love that timer. Actually, one more thing I want to mention while we're here. One mechanic somebody told me about that I didn't know about earlier. Apparently, you can use flyers to open gates from the other side. I never even thought to try that. I figured it was just a static, breakable object. No, apparently if you send a flyer in to open the gate from the other side, that's just a thing you can do. All Tactics Ogre players rejoice. The theory was right the whole time. It was Canopus opening all those damn doors. Oh, man. That little detail absolutely put a smile on my face. So I forget your name at the moment because I'm terrible with names, but thank you for bringing that up. Oh, that's good coffee. All right. So, carrying on. So, okay, in terms of Swordmasters, Thieves, all that kind of thing, there's a lot of really weird, cheesy combos that you can do. And the funny part is, with that whole discourse over some folks saying certain bits were too easy, certain bits were too hard, literally it just comes down to being able to perceive those combos. Like, it is as difficult as it kind of needs to be, as far as the game goes. Oh, man. Yeah, that was just... Anytime that you see that Bermudes team coming out, usually they're being sent out to go clear mines with their face. Yeah, I was originally thinking that they would take one mine, I would send one of the other disposable squads to go take their mine. That plan kind of fell by the wayside a little bit. I didn't realize that they were running into the second mine right away. Man. It just puts such a smile on my face to hear this constant boss music in this place. Like, this it just feels like that moment in like Bloodborne when sunset starts, or that moment that you get into Anne Orlando for the first time in Dark Souls. Like a lot of this game feels very Souls-ish in its design. Just like in terms of the traversal, in terms of opening up shortcuts back to places that you were before. And what's funny is a lot of those times, those shortcuts aren't necessarily for the purpose of opening up new areas, but they make you think about stuff. Like okay, a couple of the shortcuts that I've seen, like there was one over in Ware, Canada there, where it was just a simple trip across a little bridge. You could have built the bridge, you could have taken the town. Whichever one you do first, it lets you know about this stuff that's on the other side of the bridge. There's no reason to do the other route at that point unless you want to, but it's just neat that it gives you multiple ways to potentially get to that area. But in some cases, it's literally just a place you could already access, but it'll give you a different vantage point on an item you didn't see, or maybe some kind of a thing in the background that you just didn't notice before. You know, maybe it'll end up giving some different shape on the map that you didn't notice before. Like I noticed that a couple times in the elf areas. It's damn fine design. Like this world map is amazing in terms of what it opens up for you. So yeah, good stuff there. I gotta say, like that was just a real fine treat to see there. Yeah, we'll explore more of that particular map in just a moment here. Just kind of my first thought upon getting to Albian was actually that I only had one goal here. And oftentimes it feels like that's where a lot of the exploration goes, that you have one goal in mind, and every system just continues interweaving between itself. Like, hey, maybe you're just trying to get more resources to go buy an item, so now you've upgraded a town, and so maybe you've done some looting, and then that ended up opening up a new path, and then you get to that new path, and now suddenly you have a new class or new recruits or something. Also, I love that the devs just seemingly insert themselves into the game of just, like, obsessing over adding too much sugar to their dish while they're in the middle of a war. Oh, man. Anyway, so yeah. So as far as all that goes, like, it all ends up completely tying into itself over and over and over and over and over. Like, okay, in this case, the way that they have the RE4 merchant that's not the RE4 merchant positioned also speaks a lot to what was expected in those particular areas. The first, bear in mind, I don't have the dragon area to compare with, but like the first couple of them that I saw, the one in Cornea happens to show up right at the tail end of that entire continent. There's a pretty decent chance he never ran into the guy. There's a pretty decent chance he didn't get into that area. A lot of folks didn't find him in the demo, and in fact, there was very rude comments on one of the videos, not to call out the person, but they're like, "Oh man, this guide absolutely sucks. How are you surprised by cosmetic option in a game? Are you just stupid?" And like, I mean, I won't disagree that I'm stupid, but as far as being surprised, like, it was a very pleasant treat to be able to customize your units in a genre that is notorious for not letting you do that. And it's just enough customization. Actually, this kind of customization is something that I know that Vanillaware has been doing since forever, but it's something that I really wish got utilized more often. Like, for example, I absolutely love the customization in something like Felseal, but the little detail there where you have complete control over absolutely everything tends to lead to a thing where you might end up just plain not playing the game for a while. You might just end up sitting there re-customizing your units over and over and over and over and over, more than actually progressing anywhere, which that game's not very long. Honestly, that's fine. But it is something that I've seen as a regular consideration for this one here, where, like, you can customize the looks and approximate names of something, but you can't come up with exact names. Again, that feels like a very flow-related decision. Also, I just noticed that the waves are actually going off on the shore in the background. I never really paid attention to that detail until just now, but it looks surprisingly pretty. But, like, for example, I spent, I don't know how much time coming up with custom names in Tactics Ogre Reborn for all kinds of stupid reasons. And yeah, I love that feature, but it was a completely separate kind of joy when I was playing through this, and I went into one of the towns, and there was one of the angels with a bow, and I had previously on one of my One Vision playthroughs, I had turned Olivia into an archer, and so that's kind of been a bit of a mental meme for me for a while. Actually, yet another side note on the previous tangent on 4 more tangents. I love the fact that that this guy was able to fight off 5 units, and then that timer ended up ticking over to give him just enough health to barely survive to go steamroll the entire Death Dot solo. ish. Just like that there. Also ended up improving Chloe's thing a little while ago. So she has area heals now. But anyway, back on track. So I had gotten an Angel Knight. I don't know if I showed them on this one. They're one of the feather bows, technically. But it was a completely separate kind of joy to run into that, and I was flipping through, and it was like, hey, you know, this blue kind of looks kind of all right, so I switched them over to blue. The hair was already black. Then I'm looking through the names, and there's just Olivia on there, and then it reminded me, like, this last playthrough of One Vision, I had gone and turned her into a longbow archer after my original archer died, saving her during one of the random fights in an Iron Man run. And then previously, every time that I'd played Tactics Ogre SNES, there was just a disturbing trend that Olivia constantly got killed and angelified. Because in that game, if a high alignment unit was killed, there was a pretty decent chance. Like if it was a girl, there was a pretty decent chance that they were just coming back as an angel instead of being able to be resurrected normally. Intended to be a feature, kind of a pain in the ass, but. Anyways, so finally I was like, you know what, I'm replacing my archer for my main team with Olivia as this angel archer. It was just a completely separate happy moment of discovery there, you know? Like, it just leads to its own stuff, and one of the cool notes that somebody brought up is the fact that while you don't have custom names specifically, the names that you do have are different based on the region, so they kind of have a little bit of that world flavor going on, so that when you're looking back on your team, once all is said and done, it's like, oh, look, these people were from over here, these people were from over here. And this is before we even get into the absolutely incredible design of some of the fights here. Like, this moment in this fight, this little brief moment of that unit flying to the left, I mean, this is a fight that can be won in effectively 2 moves, but it is incredibly stressful in the meantime, where they're sending, you know, tons of pretty high-quality units at you, even when you have counters. They've typically got enough to be able to still land some chip on you. Some come with additional items and whatnot. They'll have additional reinforcements if you try to charge into either area. They've got siege emplacements. But if you're paying attention to the scene beforehand, they specifically will go and point out that one of the commanders in question is one of your character's friend. I don't like that character very much, but whatever, they'll get to play a part here. And so what they'll end up doing is that if you end up taking out the guy that's blackmailing her, and then you end up sending her to go negotiate, you can end the fight into moves. And the fact that this was just immediately figure outable right away was a really solid moment. I was taking towns not for the purpose of just going and taking towns, but for the purpose of just delaying long enough to allow that negotiation action to happen. And if we can actually backtrack real quick here on these videos, take a look at her flight pattern. There's a little corridor at the very top specifically for this purpose, where if you're using Hastening Call, it'll end up speeding up the process quite a bit. But there's a little corridor, and you'll notice, like if you follow the mini-map up here, you'll notice that the angels are kind of like curving off a little bit off to the side, so that you do have that little corridor to go get your negotiation squad through, so you don't have to kill your way up there. You don't have to fight your way up there. She can go and talk her friend down from a perfect position there. Because again, you're just trying to get these people to stand down, you don't directly want to fight them. And in this case, you do have the means to do so if you have her on your team. And that was the other thing. There's actually other ways that this can play out, because you don't actually have to have saved her up to this point. I thought you did. It turns out that no. I've seen people send me clips of cutscenes over just like people showing up on different sides, characters not being around for their own plot lines and things like that. There's actual variability to the actual plot. It's not insanely well written or anything, though I have to say the backstories on everything that happened in Albion so far is like proper holy shit tier, but like like in terms of wow, these people got screwed over something fierce. But yeah, I mean, frankly, every one of the zones, if you look into their backgrounds, they went to some pretty dark places. But yeah, it's just really heartwarming to kind of see these systems repeatedly going going and improving themselves like this. And additionally, I didn't even know there was an upgrade mechanic until now, so yeah, upgrade mechanic happens. Finally went full circle, upgraded the runic sword I've been carrying around since the very beginning of the game. It continues to be awesome, so that's good. I refuse to switch him out for anything else. There was a side quest to get some kind of supposedly ultimate unicorn weapon or something like that. Honestly, I don't even necessarily want to use that thing. I might, for reasons, but I don't know. Like, it feels like something he's supposed to use, you know? But we'll see when we get there. I went and approached that fight to see if they would be able to claim it like all the other fancy weapons. That'd be a hard no, Chief. They were getting rolled over pretty darn good. I did a little bit of position swapping to get that fight to play out. I wasn't entirely sure why they managed to get the win there, but I think it was just they ended up guarding a little bit better from different positions or something. I don't know for sure. A lot of my guard units are basically at 100% guard at this point. But something about their positioning allowed something to break through somewhere. She still ended up missing against those knights because of their buffs and everything. That's some good coffee. I ended up getting this technically cheaper but nicer tasting creamer than my wife likes. It's good stuff. She told me to stop being so cheap and get the cheaper option. Okay, actually, no, I remember what it was that allowed this fight to happen. It was basically all Beatrice over there, or I think that's her name. Anyway, sellswords are just nutty. I love how the sellswords are one part Highlander reference. It feels like with Beatrice over there. Just like the lady ones have the flamberge that looks a lot like one of the swords from Highlander. The way that they're constantly just attacking and kill chains and whatever else. I know that's not a direct reference, but God, it just feels like a reference every time that I see a flamberge. And then for the other ones, you basically got the early part of the story guts for the male sellswords. Like, you gotta love the constant references all over the place. Hell, I don't think I even mentioned up to this point you know how in Tactics Ogre and Ogre Battle you got the Euros axe, and you got the Boreas hammer. In this case, we got the Boreas axe. That's over on the Griffin right now. I guess all of the Wind God stuff is just all Boreases instead of Boreas, Notos, all of that kind of thing. So there are a few different options also for the whole recruit or execute thing, but we're all good on party members, and also, that guy spilled so much sugar, so, that's unacceptable. Unacceptable. So, he's gone. Anyways, got a sweet new necklace out of it, so that's nice. We got yet another Carnelian, so even more upgrades for some of our more standard attackers. Bought more of those same draughts. I love that the draughts have the same numbers that they did in Tactics Ogre PSV as far as percentages go. It's just nice. Actually, no, 30%, no, that actually feels more like TOR. Look at those, hold on, a quick little pause here. Hold on, no, go back, pause. Okay, so they talk up this spot. Did I have the previous conversation here? I think I did, hold on. So we win the fight, we get past this section. Dude gets iced. Did I not record that part? Well, boo. Okay, the main reason that I was at the tavern was because I went over to a lady immediately upon going to the store, and she's like, "Hey, did you remember the food mechanic exists?" I was like, "You know what, lady? That is a good point. We've had one ace squad here that's been there she is. Go stop, try and sample some of our cuisine. Fair enough." But it was just funny because I'm curious if anybody else did this. Yet another note that I should mention because it'll become relevant in a moment. Goat milk. Bear this in mind. Exactly 3 goat milk. We'll get back to this. So, okay. I love that the dishes, even up in heaven, like they, up in this heaven island here, they're like baguette sandwich. It just kind of cracked me up. Or herb encrusted chicken. Just like we're a TGI Fridays up here. Oh man. But yeah, it looks damn good. Every one of these dishes looks good. Of course, obligatory team synergy tutorial, because they're still doing team synergies up here, and I just got to reiterate just how much I love the arbalesters. I may not use much on the team, but I love everything about their design. The fact that they're the shielded crossbows makes me think of once again Empires of the Dawn of the Modern World with their. I used to love shield crossbows. It was one of the few reasons that I would actually ever play China in that one, because they got the shielded crossbow lines that you could set up. Even though it made freaking no sense and the Chakano units kind of sucked, but that's a whole other story for not right now. Anyway, but yeah. What the hell was I even getting at? I don't remember. I lost track. There was just mechanics on mechanics on mechanics, bought more magic bombs. I was just sitting on a stockpile of those things because I was here for exactly one purpose. When I came to Albion here, just to reiterate what I was talking about earlier about just mechanics constantly weaving into each other beautifully, I had exactly one goal, because I knew that realistically, from what I knew, I could probably go take on the endgame fights right now. Like, I've heard of folks saying that they were managing to pull them off back at 20. I don't doubt it. It seems like the kind of game where that would be possible. But over here in Boss Music Land, I had exactly one goal. Because of the marriage mechanic and stuff like that, I wanted to go get Elaine and Chloe hitched. Because, basically you have your obligatory main character, and it figured, I made her look like my wife, and basically, she's a phlebotomist, so also is stabbing people and healing them, so figured, you know what, that seems like a fitting thing. So I figured I would do that for the first playthrough, and so I'd gotten 2 out of 3 cutscenes, and the last cutscene is somewhere on this frickin' island. I was honestly about to just go scrap that plan and just go, go set them up with a sniffy dog archer lady from Ware, Canada, just because that was their first destination. Anyway, so, by the way, look at this backstory here. Like, they basically directly mention that that they tried to stick around and fight and whatever else, that they didn't actually end up giving up, but their own people ended up having an uprising and throwing their kids into sacrificial meat piles. By the way, welcome to Totally Not Ramza over there. We'll get back to him in a moment. But yeah, my only goal coming to this island was like, I'm gonna find the one region that has this one cutscene, it's some harbor somewhere. And so I was exploring around, trying to find all of the nearby locations, because that had worked out, decently well in the past. And so I was going around looking for that icon. It doesn't tell you until you've found that region where the thing takes place, and I'm not about to go look it up. So I kept exploring around trying to find it, and sure enough, it feels like we're probably going to have to end up conquering the entire island to even find this dang place, or wherever it is. But ultimately, we're literally overthrowing a country so that Elaine can go be a little bit less awkward with his love interest. But I was originally thinking to go cheese the end game using the giant pile of magical bombs that we've been amassing this whole time. And ultimately ended up needing to use several of them in order to get through this fight, because I figured, okay, you know what? I'm not necessarily interested in doing the entirety of Albion yet. This is, I want to save some stuff for, it doesn't even feel like it's necessary to save anything for follow-up playthroughs, because I'm going to be playing through this one quite a bit. Got a lot of challenge runs in mind. We've got the soldier-only run I mentioned, unpromoted run. Actually, one more that I was really excited for was to do a Valor-only run, where basically no units can move whatsoever unless it's a Valor action, just to justify jumping everywhere. But we'll get to that later. Okay. So we got a guy with his spiky black armor and blonde hair here that's about to go wage a war on the church with his friggin' dragon boots ass shoes over there. Love how he's got the nut breakers on his shoes. Seriously, dragon boots from RuneScape. Tell me that's not exactly what he's wearing right now. Yeah. So I mentioned earlier, remember the goat milk. There was a store that had a bunch of goat biscuits. I didn't know why they were there, but I was like, this is different. I'm gonna buy a bunch of these. And sure enough, apparently to actually get access to goat milk to manage to upgrade towns around here, you actually have to go feed the goats. And that's just really cute. And they're all hanging out nearby their goat sigil. It's just, again, very Souls-esque design throughout this whole thing, that it feels like it just constantly feels like everything is weaving and weaving and bobbing back in between each other in different fun ways. Oh, you love to see it. You love to see it. There's just always more. So I went to go collect more weapons because that was just on the list. Why not? Oh, choking on that delicious coffee. Dang it. That's not good. Dying generally is not very good for content. Or very good in some people's cases, I suppose. Anyway, let's continue on here. So, okay. So, continuing on. This fight. God damn! Is it awesome? For one thing, again, obligatory Albian has boss music going around at all times. But look at the number of different mechanics that are going on here. They've got severe storms going on as well as really high mountains. Your flyers can't traverse most of the mountains around here. They specifically mention this. But they've got siege emplacements, they've got cavalry, they've got near infinite infantry coming in ginormous numbers. I think this was one of the first failed attempts because I ended up retooling my teams a bit after this. But yeah, like we're talking about like at some point I look over to the side of the map wondering how many units they've actually got that they're sending. Because previously they were kind of coming in waves and whatnot. And there's just like 20 or 30 squads just marching over at one time. This was actually the first time I've seen the game somewhat struggle on the switch between the weather effects and everything else. Also, I love that that our dude over there is just kind of calling you out for not using the RAM if you don't load somebody into it immediately, because that thing has to go a really long distance. But then, as somebody mentioned, apparently you can just open the gate with flyers, so I'm going to have to try that the next time I go over there. Anyway, so yeah, lots of difficult fights right from the get-go, but on top of all of those various combat mechanics, we've got stealth mechanics coming through with the forest. Though we've essentially got a main road fight where most of the units are coming from, but they're still going to try to sneak units through the forest. So you have to patrol the forest. You want to try and get support fire coming from the towers. The towers can't support the ones in the forest, and if you don't take the units up north, they will eventually end up spawning counters to counter the kinds of stuff that's able to be effective versus this infantry, namely casters and swordmasters primarily. So they were sending units to deal with them a bit better. So in order to deal with that, what I was doing was using at first I was using Vitalize to go send them forward a few steps, and then just kind of reposition into a new area, until eventually just switching to using one of the newbie squads to move them up for free. It's kind of saving them the points on those Vitalize costs and things like that. Because eventually, you know, the Swordmaster's dodge rates go down. Eventually they will have an accurate hit that hits them, but that combination of freeze attacks, magic attacks, and high evasion really, really helped with that Swordmaster team there, where they're able to pretty near, like 95% of the time, they will take completely scratch-free engagement against most of the units on this particular map. But then looking at the support towers, if they get anywhere near a support tower, they get shredded. Like, no questions asked, they will just lose a fight if a support tower is garrisoned. And that's one of the reasons that they'll be sending units through the forests, because they'll actually try to sneak them back into those towers. They'll actually prioritize that over taking your own HQ there. Also, additionally, I love the politics behind this. So, Mr. I swear I'm not a Ramza, and/or he's the Ramza we have at home, basically is talking to his soldiers here, and they agree to stand down, but they don't agree to directly join your side like a lot of the other units have done so far. Politically, they can't go fight against their own guys, so they'll only attack in situations where they can't be culpable for the attack, so they'll provide support fire, but if a unit passes by them, they seemingly just pass right through them. They just pass around them. They will not directly engage anything. But again, they will provide support fire if they can, and as long as they're nearby. The cavalry will not attack, they'll just avoid steamrolling some of your weaker squads and whatnot. Or rather, your more momentum, kind of vulnerable squads, as it were. But man, I love that in a political sense. Like, it's one of those cases of you don't necessarily always need good political writing to set up a good political situation. That is pretty freaking legit. And we didn't even cover the fact that, speaking of local politics and things, they actually mentioned that the reason that most of the angels are running around with blindfolds and headbands, they got their eyes and ears ripped out. because they were the ones that originally tried to do the whole resisting thing, and stuff didn't go too great for them. So that sucks. Sucks to be them there. Because yeah, apparently they didn't want to quit even after they were told to quit, and whatever else. So yeah, that was their own people that did that to them too. So yeah. Anyway, so let's see. So yeah, I kept trying to send the cavalry out to go hit that tower so that we could advance a little bit. She ended up getting intercepted by units that kept wandering into the woods specifically to guard that tower. So eventually I ended up sending up, I can't believe it's not Ramza, to go essentially kind of run interference in order for her to go capture the tower. Eventually we ended up taking the town up north, which ended up dealing with some of the other reinforcements that were coming in, so that there was no longer chip damage coming in for our swordmaster there. Eventually, in this particular attempt, I ended up advancing a little bit too far, and they ended up repopulating the tower before I got there, so that ended up seeing them getting a little bit screwed over. But yeah, it's... Oof. Dude, there's so much stuff going on mechanically here. And this is before we've even gotten halfway. Where you deliberately can't even use the whole flyer trick unless you take the north first. If you take the north first, the mountains there are nice enough that you're able to actually bypass a lot of the mountains, but again, a lot of the flyers here are at the same time flyers and also good at defending against flyers. Oh man. So, like, there's so much to think about here. There's so many little mechanics going on that it just puts a freaking smile on my face. Like this moment right here. The fact that there's that little gap in between these mounds of units to be able to use a hastened to then quickly go pick up that campfire to then head up north to go take the town. That is strategy porn right there, dude. That is somehow combining together the Frogger experience along with the Ogre battle experience in a way that is somehow taking place in Dark Souls, and I love it. I can't gush enough about how damn well designed this game is. Like, I don't care if somebody's figured out some kind of iffy synergy somewhere. Like, good for you. That's just good play being rewarded. Man. At every step, there's just more stuff. And at this point in the game, you're getting so stretched out that even having a full complement of 10 units out in the field at one time isn't necessarily enough. I found moments where I had all 10 units engaged somewhere and still wanted to go use mercenaries to go stretch out even farther, because they were constantly reshuffling, healing, recovering, holding certain positions, holding defensive spots somewhere else, patrolling somewhere else. It legitimately just feels like a pause and go type of version of Age of Empires 2, and specifically, if anybody ever played RTS games with a pause button, like if you ever played those campaigns in single player or something like that, I mentioned last time that it reminded me of Dawn of the Modern World. That was my personal favorite one there. It was like that and AoE 2, and like I love playing AoE 2 with my brother. And just those moments whenever you're doing single player and that of just like pausing and you're dealing with this, you're dealing with this, you're dealing with this, you're building over here, you're sneaking over here, you're defending over here, and it's managing to put that all together in the Ogre battle formula. God, it's so good. Also, the Scorpion Squad in its not quite final form did actually have some glowing moments here, where against certain unit types, they are basically able to completely nullify everything that they can do. They did end up getting shot down later, but this is what that squad was designed for. Those moments where things only have a bunch of direct high-power attacks, and they can just dance around it. So for those moments, like, they can repeatedly take a bunch of attacks. They can't last very long, but they have just enough stamina to be able to take multiple attacks back-to-back, and then run somebody down. They take the defensive, and then they run them down in their rest modes, and the stamina on your flying units is just enough to be able to chip them down in basically every situation. So either way, good thought out stuff there. You love to see it, but yeah, I did end up eventually screwing up this fight by marching them a bit too far forward. And you'll notice, we're barely like a quarter of the way through this frickin' map and we're already running out of time. I love this aesthetic that it's nighttime and it's heavily downpouring and we got this sweet Dark Souls music going on in the background. It's so cool! Oh, I love it! I absolutely love it! Anyway, Yeah, and then we're going in there attacking heaven with bears and friggin'. Come to think of it, that's the one thing we're missing so far, the lizards. Well, I guess we got one wyvern. Does that kind of count? We needed to bring the lizard experience up to heaven. Interestingly enough, the lizards are the one thing I skipped. Anyways, I wanted another archer support squad. The plan was, well, the original plan was an archer support squad, and then I kind of just gave a bunch of archers to a scout squad, and they just ended up zooming around really fast. So this ended up being the distraction squad instead. So instead of waiting for more points to use Vitalize over and over again, what I decided to do was use this Werefox squad in order to use the nighttime to go quickly advance this party over here, because they could rapidly reposition themselves, swap positions with Yana's unit, and have her advance. Up until that frickin' tower happened. Up until that frickin' tower happened, and I think what I'm probably going to do is have the Fox, I'm probably going to have to retool their team to be part of something else. I don't know yet. But either way. God, did I mention how cool this fight is yet? Because, yeah, apparently that's the end of the clips that I had here. So we'll just go ahead and back it up a few here and just kind of wrap things up. So, again, as far as, like, this is still just expert. I can't wait for TZ mode, dude. This massive emphasis on using Valor points correctly, using items as basically an opener or as an emergency option, not having access to those corn options, which admittedly, those corn options have actually kind of fallen off in relevance outside of extending the timer in the most recent parts that I've done. Just because it started, like, early on, stuff like Wild Rush was incredibly powerful. At this point, stuff like Arrow Rain actually ends up serving a really solid purpose. I don't think I took a clip here, but for example, using an Arrow Rain on the Angels and the Towers actually immediately solves that problem. So they're good for that purpose, but the maps get so vast that even 10 items is not really carrying you much of anywhere. So if you've ever heard somebody saying that they just 100% only item cheesed absolutely every single map of the game, they were playing on standard or easy. No questions asked. 5 or 10 items is not enough to cheese much of anything. It might give you an advantage, and it's a good way to make up for mistakes and things like that. But bear in mind, one mistake, unless you have a camping kit or something like that, one mistake could easily cost you like 4 or 5 of those item uses to get that team up to any position where they can even get a win, you know? So, just in case you've seen some of them angry comments, it's really disappointing to see that kind of stuff come up. Again, I'm assuming it's like, I've seen some folks that legitimately just had like really solid ideas and that's good play being rewarded, but like in a lot of cases it feels like folks are just kind of making stuff up to complain about something, and that sucks. Like, I know it happens with every game. There was so much of that crap with TOR. Like, oh, dude, I totally swear I didn't hack the game with a friggin' cheat engine. You know, it's totally normal. Like, I sent in my dude here, like, with, you know, stats in the 1200s. It's like, so let me ask you, did those stats stop rendering because the game doesn't allow you to have stats that high? Do you know how obvious that is? That you were cheating? Like, end game stats in that game are like 200-300 still, if you've been really grinding 300-400. And they're like, no, I just naturally got up to 1200. It's too easy. Yeah, bullshit, buddy. Anyway. But yeah, I don't know. It feels like the weird, completely pointless clout chasing that happens for every strategy game. I don't know why it's there, why it's a thing. You hate to see it. But anyways, whatever. Point being, final island over here, for what it's worth, this place does seem a lot more brief. Like, the fights have seemed a decent bit more brief, but good God, are they intense. Like, to me, it feels like the balance so far has been that you're intended to, like, claim 1 or 2 islands, and then just go for the end game. Like, you just pick one easy island, you pick one hard island, and then you kind of go from there, you know? To me, that's what it feels like so far. So I think that's the kind of intended progression there, that you can go do all of the extra stuff afterwards if you want to, kind of like a Golden Sun Lost Age situation, where, like, yeah, you don't really need that level of power by that point, but it's there if you want to. It's a fun little romp, and it's fun to explore and all of that kind of thing, you know? At least that's what seems to be the case here, because I could absolutely see somebody going like Elfheim, Albion, and then going straight to end game. Or in my case, I could have gone straight for Where Canada straight into end game if I wanted to. But it just feels like you can explore as much as you want to. It's just like you go out, you explore, you find your items, you do your, Dark Souls, Elden Ring, whatever else thing of just you explore to go flesh out your builds, to flesh out your options and things like that. You get as much stuff as you need in order to get to your objective, and then you've got a bunch of kind of boss fights all over the place that are going to be way trickier to get through. So maybe you'll want specific things, like previously mentioned, using magic bombs to go cheese your way into Where Canada, or potentially using a lot of like, let's say, using that to go get access to early sword masters, to then use those to cheese a lot of the things that are happening over in Elfheim, to then potentially speedrun into Albion or something like that. Anyway, so whew, that's quite the chatter on this whole thing. So that's about that. Thank y'all for stopping by. Next one will probably just be the full game review. I know I've said that for the last few things here, but I'm pretty sure this is going to be like the proper end game at this point. Stuff's getting stretched pretty far to its limits as far as the system goes. I've had cases where it's possible to get people in theoretically up to like 6 points for AP and stuff like that. But anyways, I gotta get going though, so y'all have yourselves a good one. Thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.